Okay, cool.
I will admit all.
Yeah. But just wait for everyone to get in. Oke, selamat malam semuanya. Semoga baik-baik saja semuanya. Terima kasih sudah bergabung dalam acara webinar dari University of Edinburgh malam ini. Di Edinburgh sekarang masih pagi, siang mungkin tepatnya ya, siang hari. Kita tidak berlama-lama lagi, langsung akan dimulai sesi pertamanya. Ada 2 orang dari Edinburgh University, namanya sama-sama Louis, tapi nama belakangnya berbeda. Satu Louis Zielenberg, satu lagi Louis Tracy. Okay, Louis, go ahead. You may start your session.
Thank you, Hendra. Okay, thank you, Louise. So, good evening to everybody in Indonesia and welcome along to the University of Edinburgh. Before we start, just to do an audio check for all of you in the audience, can you hear the presenter talking? Can you hear me talking? If you could please type yes in the text chat area, and then we know that you can hear me. Yes, I can see everybody's typing yes, so that's very positive. Okay. So just to let you know before we go any further that we are recording today's session. So the university will maintain a copy of the presentation that we're going to do today, but do be aware that any questions that you post will be included in the recording. So if everybody is okay with us to record the session, then we're going to make an official start. Okay, so first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Louise Zielenberg, and I am the Regional Manager for Southeast Asia and Australasia at the University of Edinburgh. So it's my job under normal circumstances to travel around the regions of Southeast Asia and Australasia and to meet with students who are interested in applying to the university. So whether that's for medicine, veterinary, science, engineering, arts, humanities, whatever subject you might be interested in, normally you would be able to meet with me perhaps in your high school, for example, or at an event, maybe one of IBEX events, or maybe something like the British Council in Indonesia, education fair, something like that. So normally I would be in Indonesia to meet with you and have a one-to-one chat with you about applying to the university. But obviously this year is a bit different. We're now into, you know, the full 1 year's past of this situation, and we're still operating by doing these sessions online. So hence here we are today, and I'm joined by my colleague Louise Tracy. So I'm just going to give a second for her to introduce herself.
Thank you. So my name is Louise Tracy and I'm Regional Manager for Southeast Asia, so doing a very similar job to Louise Z. Hopefully it won't be too long in the future until we can get back out to Indonesia to visit your beautiful country and of course tell you more about the University of Edinburgh. But in the meantime, we've got a really great session for you today where I hope you'll learn a lot more about the university. So back to Louise and I will chat to you later in the presentation.
Thanks, Louise. Okay, so when you signed up for the session today, we did ask if any if you had any questions that you wanted to ask at the session. So we have taken note of the questions that you sent in, and we have tried to include the answers to these questions as much as possible in the presentation. So hopefully you will find the answer to your question within the content of the presentation that we are about to deliver, but we will also have time at the end of the session for question and answer. So if you can hold on to your questions until the end of the presentation, and then at the end of the presentation, myself, Louise, and the staff from IBEC will all be able to join and try to answer as many questions as possible. And we will do that by using the chat box. So as I said, just to re-emphasize, if you can hold on to your questions till the end of the session, and then we will try to answer then. So what we're going to talk about today in our presentation is, first of all, an introduction to Scotland and the benefits of studying overseas, a general introduction to the City of Edinburgh and obviously the University of Edinburgh, some insights into the bachelor and master's degree structure here in Scotland, which is a little bit different to the rest of the UK, some overview of the university entry requirements, tips for applying and the application process. And then of course, the title of our seminar really was about the global pandemic and beyond. So we want to talk a bit about the current hybrid learning approach that we have at the university for this academic year and how the COVID situation in Scotland is currently. And then we do want to go on and look at the future. So having a look at how we think the academic year 2021 is going to look. A bit about the experience here in Edinburgh, and then we're going to touch on the post-graduation, the new graduate route, which hopefully you are aware of, but I'm finding quite a lot of students are not aware of it so far. And this is a 2-year post-study work visa that students who are studying in the UK can apply for on graduation. And then, as I said, we will move into the question and answer section. Okay, so moving on to the next slide, we have a question for you. So this is the only question we're going to ask you in the whole session, but we would like to know, where are you on your application journey? So let us know. We're going to put a poll on the screen, and if you can let us know if you've already applied, if you're applying for 2021, 2022, or if you're still considering if Edinburgh is right for you or not. So we're going to pop a poll on the screen just now, and you should all have the facility, there we are, to vote on that. Okay. Very interesting. So it's looking like there are a lot of people who have already applied. People are still voting. Still a few people to vote. Okay, so it's steadied off now. So it looks like the majority of you have already applied. We do have some applying for 2021, some for 2022, and some are still thinking, but the majority seem to have applied already. Great. Okay, so we will obviously share information for those of you who have applied already, but also those of you who are still looking at making an application. Okay, so we'll put the poll away and move on to the next screen. So we're going to, first of all, talk a little bit about Scotland. So some of you, I would not be surprised if your geography doesn't extend to a great knowledge of Scotland. So just to give you the basics, Scotland is one of the 4 countries which makes up the UK, and we are in the northernmost part of the UK, sitting on top of England. And you can see from the picture, we are a very beautiful country, actually. We have major towns and cities, but we also have some very beautiful countryside. So we've tried to include some pictures in this presentation of Scotland and of Edinburgh. So do keep an eye on the pictures, not just on the text, because it's worth a look. So we are, in Scotland, we do have a distinctive culture, and we are a country of contrasts. So in Scotland, we are actually a very proud nation. We're very proud to say that we're Scottish. We do get a bit angry if people call us English, because we're definitely not English, we're definitely Scottish. But we do also align ourselves and say that we are British also. Scotland is quite a small country, so we only have a population of 5.4 million, and that makes up about 8.5% of the UK's total population. But you would be surprised because we are very well connected to major UK cities within Europe and the rest of the world. So when students come to study at the University of Edinburgh, I feel that they always think, oh, how do I get to Scotland? It's so far away. How am I even going to travel there? But you would be surprised, there's so many ways and routes that you can access Edinburgh without even the need to go through London. So we always try to recommend students, if you're traveling to the University of Edinburgh, you don't need to go through Heathrow Airport. You can fly via Paris with Air France, you can fly via Amsterdam with KLM, Istanbul with Turkish Airlines, or via Dubai with Emirates. And all of those airlines connect directly into the airport here in Edinburgh. So when we visit Jakarta, normally I would fly with KLM and I would go Edinburgh, Amsterdam, Amsterdam, Jakarta. And it is a long journey. I admit it's about 15 hours to Jakarta, but it's certainly easier than going through Heathrow. So do consider that. And also it does mean that if you study in the UK, it's quite easy to travel around. From Edinburgh to London, for example, is about 1 hour flying time. Manchester, you can go by train, or you could even drive there in about 3.5 hours. So it's well connected to other UK cities, and there are direct flights to many European capitals. So for example, Paris, Berlin, Amsterdam, Stockholm. It's easy to go there for a weekend, for example, if you wanted to get a break from the UK and experience some European culture. Now, you may be surprised to know that actually in Scotland we have our own parliament. So we actually have our own Scottish government, which is separate from the Westminster government. So you will all be familiar with Boris Johnson, who is obviously the Prime Minister of the UK, and the government which sits in Westminster in London. But you might not be aware that Scotland actually has its own government. So we have the Scottish government, which has a parliament. We have our parliament, which is at Holyrood, and we have our own First Minister. And our First Minister is called Nicola Sturgeon. It's a female, a lady First Minister. And she is, I guess in some ways, she is the equivalent to our Prime Minister, but we still are also answerable to Westminster for many things. So the Scottish Government has control over some devolved areas, but not everything. But education is one of the devolved areas. So we do have control over our own education system. And actually the education system here in Scotland is different to the rest of the UK. And the two main ways that we can show this, or which you may be familiar with, are at high school level, for example. In the rest of the UK, students would normally do A-levels, as many of you will be doing in international schools in Indonesia. But here in Scotland, we don't do A-levels. We do a qualification called Scottish Highers. So typically, we would normally do 5 or 6 subjects, but we only do that over 1 year, as opposed to doing maybe 3 subjects at A-level over 2 years. So that's the first difference. And the second difference is in our undergraduate degree system here in Scotland, all of our bachelor's degrees, well, the majority of them are 4 years in duration, as opposed to the rest of the UK, which would be 3 years. Obviously, medicine, vet medicine are different, but generally speaking, an undergraduate degree in Scotland would be 4 years. We're also very proud of our reputation here in Scotland for being very hospitable and for being welcoming. And we see ourselves as very friendly people and very welcoming to foreigners, to international students coming into the country, or to migrants coming in to work. Okay, next slide, please. So just to kind of an overview of the benefits of studying in the UK, if that's something that you're still thinking about, but you're not 100% sure, maybe you're choosing between the US and the UK, or you're looking at Australia and the UK. So certainly we can assure you of a very welcoming and inclusive way of life here in the UK. It's when we use the word inclusive, we want to refer to really whatever your nationality, your religion, your sexuality, all of those things here are without prejudice in the UK. So you can really be who you are, be who you want to be here without judgment here in the UK. We also have a very rich and historical culture. I'm sure you will have seen many photographs. If you haven't visited, if you've seen photographs of the UK, there's a lot of history, obviously going back thousands and thousands of years here, lots of historic tourist attractions to visit, buildings, etc. And here in the city of Edinburgh, we're a very historical city, and a lot of the university buildings are very historical as well. So if you have the chance to come and study with us and you enjoy that kind of historical element, there's lots to see here in Edinburgh. You'll be familiar as well that the UK obviously offers exceptional academic standards. So we do have a world-renowned and very trusted education system here, not just in Scotland, but in obviously the whole of the UK, so Wales, Northern Ireland and England. And we do have many world-class universities. So 26 institutions are actually in the world's top 200, 26 UK institutions. And we do have approximately 500,000 international students who do choose to come and study with us here in the UK every year. Okay, now a little bit about Edinburgh for those of you who haven't visited. This is a pretty fantastic picture that you see in front of you. And you can actually, this is pretty much the whole city of Edinburgh that you see. You can see it's very green. We have lots of parks, hills to the south of the city called the Pentland Hills, where you can go walking, and the city centre. I can't see it really on this picture, but what you can see is from the hill that these students are sitting on, you can see some of the university buildings just down there. So the city of Edinburgh has a population of about 500,000. So remember at the beginning I mentioned that the population of Scotland is about 5.5 million. So Edinburgh is about 500,000 and students make up over 15%. So we have 4 universities located in the city of Edinburgh, and the University of Edinburgh is the largest of those 4 universities. But if you add all the students up at all the universities, they would make up over 15% of the city's population. So it is a very student-focused city. It's obviously the capital of Scotland. I didn't mention that, but we are the capital. So we are seen as an inspiring capital, thriving economy and European central hub. And we are branded the festival city because we do have 12 annual festivals every year. And you may have heard of the Edinburgh International Fringe Festival. And this is an arts festival which takes place every year in the month of August. So if you do come to study at the university, please do stay on over the summer 1 year so that you can experience this International Arts Festival. We're also a UNESCO World Heritage Site and the world's first UNESCO City of Literature. And we are the UK's greenest city, very compact city, as you can see. I mean, looking at that picture, we're not a huge sprawling city. We're nothing like Jakarta or anything like that. It's perfectly possible to walk around the city centre, and it's pleasant to walk around the city centre because unlike Indonesia, we don't have that humidity factor. So walking around on a summer's day is very, very pleasant indeed. And you can cycle. Lots of students will own bikes or hire bikes, cycle around the city or walk around the city. But for those of you who are not into that, we do have very reliable public transport, and that is mainly provided by public bus or by tram. Okay. So the University of Edinburgh, so the picture that you see here on the slide is of our law school. So very historical building. This is what I was referring to when I mentioned about some of the university buildings are extremely historical. So this is where we have our law school. For those of you who are interested in an LLB or an LLM at the University of Edinburgh, this is where you would be studying. Okay, so the University of Edinburgh is one of the UK's ancient universities. So you might not be familiar with this term, but the UK has 6 ancient universities, 2 of which are in England, that would be Oxford and Cambridge, and 4 of which are in Scotland. And we are very, very proud to have 4 universities, 4 of the ancient universities here in Scotland. University of Edinburgh was founded in 1583 and it is a global top 20 university. So in the QS World Rankings 2020-2021, we are ranked 20th in the world. And we are a founding member of the Russell Group. The Russell Group, if you are not familiar with them, the Russell Group is a group of research intensive UK universities, which the Russell Group are often likened to the US Ivy League. Okay, so we are a modern, so although we're a historical university, we are modern and progressive. And for those of you who have already applied or who have been considering applying, you might already have realised from our website that we have over 400 different bachelor's degrees and 300 different taught master's degree programmes to choose from. So there are a lot of subjects offered at Edinburgh, and whether those would be single honours or joint honours programmes, there's a lot to choose from. So for those of you who have not yet applied, do take your time to go through the degree finder on our website to have a look at all the combinations. We do have some quite innovative degree programmes responding to global challenges, particularly at master's level, and we are constantly introducing new programmes and updating existing programmes. So for example, in our informatics subject area, we've just introduced 2 new master's programs. So if you're interested in computer science or in those areas, you should have a look at our website at some of the new programs that are coming online. We're also trying to be as sustainable as possible, and we aim to be carbon neutral by 2040. And we have recently had a 1.5 billion investment into our teaching, learning, research and sports facilities. So we are open to the world, even despite COVID, despite coronavirus, we are still very much open to the world. We currently, this academic year, every academic year, the number of students are increasing. This year, we're at 45,000 students coming from over 160 different nationalities represented within that student body. And we have over 15,000 staff. So the academic to student ratio is 1 to 5. So it does show that our staff are accessible. Students are able to interact with staff, whether that's maybe not in person at the moment, but by phone or by Skype or by Zoom or however, you are able to interact with academic staff. And obviously, we're located here in Scotland's capital city. So for those of you considering undergraduate degrees, I did mention at the beginning of the session that the bachelor's degree structure here in Scotland is slightly different to the rest of the UK. So the University of Edinburgh follows this Scottish system. Obviously, as we have 4 of the ancient universities located here in Scotland, traditionally those 4 ancient universities have offered a 4-year bachelor programme. So this is why we have this in the UK. And what that really means for students coming into a 4-year degree structure at bachelor's level gives you some flexibility in the early years. So particularly in the first and second year of your degree programme, normally if you're doing a single honours study, you would normally be able to take between 2 and 3 outside subjects as your elective subjects. So you would study your major, but you could also choose 2 or 3 other subjects from really anywhere in the university to give you that breadth of study. So you're not just studying your major, but you're also getting university level education in other subjects. And normally we would offer that in the first 2 years of your degree. And then in the 3rd and 4th year, it becomes more focused on your major subject, on your specialisation. And you would still have the opportunity to choose elective modules, but generally speaking, those elective modules would come from the same subject area as your major. So these are your optional modules and your core modules, and combined, you can basically formulate your own timetable based on your particular interests, and that allows you to build key skills across a range of different subjects. So it's really what we call breadth of study is what we're trying to offer you. So whereas if you undertake a 3-year degree, for example, there isn't the same opportunity for that breadth of study because you have to go straight into your major and your study has to be more focused just on that major. We also offer study abroad opportunities at the University of Edinburgh. Generally speaking, you would complete your first 2 years here in Edinburgh. The 3rd year, you would have the option to go on a study abroad year, and it is optional, so you don't have to do that. But if you wanted to, for example, do a year at one of our partner universities in the US, you could study your bachelor degree here in Scotland, in the UK, but you could also incorporate a year's study abroad within that 4-year structure. So this is something that's really positive on your CV because it shows that you have a degree from the UK, but you've also studied for a year in the US. And that study abroad opportunity does not add an extra year onto your degree. That's still within the 4 years. So that would be usually your 3rd year. If you don't choose to study abroad, you would remain in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and you would do the 3rd year here with us. So this slide that you see on the screen here is a typical bachelor's degree structure. So as I said, just to summarize, you go into your year 1, you would do your main subject, the major that you've chosen, but you can choose your outside courses from really anywhere, from science, humanities, social sciences. And in year 2, this would be fairly similar. You would continue with your main subject and you can choose your outside courses. They don't have to be the same as the ones you did in 1st year. They can be completely different. So say, for example, in 1st year, your main subject was international relations. You could still do, for example, a marketing course, or you could do a maths course, or you could even do a design course. And then in year 2, you would continue with your international relations, but your outside courses could be different. So you could do a language, for example. So there's a really wide range of subjects that you can pick and choose to make your degree program as interesting and as relevant as you want it to be. And as I said, by year 3 and year 4, the focus is more on that major subject. So you would still continue with your core modules and you would be able to choose optional modules again, but they would really be more from within that specialization. And then, as I said, in 3rd year, if you wanted to study abroad, you can, but it's optional, it's not compulsory. And then in 4th year, you would be still doing some top modules in your major, but you would also be working on some research because at the end of the 4th year, you would normally submit a dissertation or a project. So that's usually quite a large piece of written work. And in some cases, there is a 5th year. Those tend to be in the sciences. So in some sciences, we offer, for example, the qualification M.Eng or M.Inf or M.Chem or M.Phys. And that is basically an additional year, which is what we call an integrated master's. So you would gain an M.Eng qualification rather than a B.Eng at the end of the 5th year. So it's up to you. You can apply for the 4th year, the 4-year program, and then if you want to stay on and do the 5th year, the integrated master's, then you can. But bear in mind that you would probably have to extend your visa if you wanted to do that. So it's a good idea to have a look at the 4-year course and the 5th year course before you make your application so that you can decide which one is right for you. Not all students want to commit to 5 years, 4 years might be enough. So for those of you who are interested in master's degrees here at the University of Edinburgh, most of our master's degrees are 12 months. So the MScs and the MRes programs typically are 12 months of full-time study from September to September. And they are typically advanced and quite specialist academic programs. So we have obviously the top masters and we also have the research masters. With the top masters, generally it is a mix of core and optional modules again. So similar to the bachelor's degree where you have your compulsory modules, but you can also choose optional modules. But obviously they would have to be from within your subject area because as a master's program is only 1 year in duration, there is not the time to be picking and choosing modules from all over the university. And then the taught masters will culminate in an independent project or dissertation, which you would submit in the final semester. And the final semester is usually what we would call the summer, so from June to the following September. Just to mention as well, we do have some 2-year master's research programs, which would be like the MPhil, and obviously the PhD qualifications that we have are 3 years, but in some cases, some students take up to 4 years to complete them. So the MPhil, the MRes, or the PhD are all kind of independent research programs. And really, for the MPhil or for the PhD, you would have to have a fairly clear idea obviously of the specialisation that you want to go into the area of research that you want to go into. For the MRes, maybe not so much. There might be a bit more flexibility on that, but on the 2 or 3 year programmes, you have to have a very clearly defined idea of your research area. Okay. So just to go over a little bit about the structure of the university. So as you heard, we are pretty large, 45,000 students. And the way we deal with this size, if you like, is that the university is split into 3 large colleges. So actually, when you make an application to the university, your application is not seen by a central admissions team. It's seen by an admissions team in one of these 3 colleges. So the largest college is the College of Arts, Humanities and Social Sciences. Subject areas which are popular within this college, I would say definitely business, excuse me. Our business programs, very, very popular at undergraduate and at master's level. Economics, also very popular, particularly at undergraduate. Just a note about law, that at undergraduate, it's Scots law that we offer at the university, so might not be relevant for you if you're wanting to practice internationally. Also popular, obviously, psychology within that college, and within the social and political science, that's where we also house our international relations program. So some very, very popular and hotly contested programs within that college. Our middle-sized college is the College of Science and Engineering. Definitely the most popular school within that college would be informatics. So that's where we have all of our computer science, data science, artificial intelligence programs are located within that school, but also popular engineering. We have a wide range of different engineering programs. Maths is also popular, physics as well. And then the third college, which is our smallest college, is medicine and vet medicine. So we do offer a medicine degree, a vet medicine degree, but we also have biomedical sciences, medical sciences, and things like molecular genetics, population health sciences. So those would be our 3 colleges. As I mentioned, when you make an application, it is viewed by the admissions team of that particular college. So just to let you know, if you're considering making an application, if you haven't done so yet, we only accept applications for undergraduate degrees through UCAS. And for master's degrees, you can apply directly via our website, or you can go into the IBEC office, or maybe not go into the office, but contact IBEC, and they are able to help you make an application. If you want some visa advice, for example, you might want to enlist the services of IBEC to help you. So that information is on our website, but just so you know, it's fairly straightforward to make an application. Okay, next slide is about our entry requirements. So this is certainly something to take note of. This slide is very useful. So if you are applying for a bachelor degree, we require either A-levels, IB, or US curriculum, for example, SATs or APs. Currently, we do not accept the Indonesian high school qualification for entry to year 1, because it is not quite, it doesn't equate exactly to the A-level or IB standard. So if you're studying in an Indonesian high school, what we would usually advise you to do is take some APs or SATs extra and use those for entry to university. The other route in, if you're studying in Indonesian high school, is to do a foundation program. However, this can in some cases add an extra year onto the study, so that would be 5 years. So generally we are aware that for those of you who are in Indonesian high school, typically you're also doing some of the US curriculum standard tests or the AEs, and we welcome those as entry qualifications. So for masters, to go into our MSc programs, we're looking for a 4-year bachelor's degree from Indonesia, and your GPA would typically need to be a 3.2 minimum out of 4. or above. Some of our more competitive courses, for example, in the business school or even in the law school, some of the LLMs or some of the MSCs in business may require higher and may give you a conditional offer above the 3.2, because some of these courses are so competitive, the number of applications we get is enormous, so it pushes up the average requirement. And we do require English language. Generally speaking, unless you've done A-levels, GCSEs, we're looking usually for IELTS 6.5 or 7, depending on the course. So it's best to have a look on the degree finder and you'll be able to see the English language requirements. We do also have pre-sessional English programs, but typically we tend to find that students from Indonesia don't really join the pre-sessional English. They are happy to proceed with the IELTS test instead. Okay, if we can just go on to the next slide, which is just about the subject requirements. So it's just a note to say, check our website for any subject specific requirements. So for example, you might have a bachelor's degree, you might have a great GPA of 3.5, but it might not be exactly in the right subject, because some of our master's programs are very specific in the bachelor's degree that they look for you to have. So make sure you check that out on the degree finder, which A-levels we need or which IB subjects we need at SL or at HL. If you haven't studied the relevant required subjects, it is likely that you will not be eligible. So before you just ping in an application, do please check that you do meet the requirements. And there may be some additional requirements for some programs. So for example, there might be an interview for certain programs or a portfolio, for example, if it was an art and design course. Okay. So just finally from me, before I hand over to my colleague Louise, just some application tips. So entry to the University of Edinburgh is competitive. Meeting the minimum entry requirement doesn't guarantee a place. So it is, if you exceed the requirement and you have some additional professional experience, that can boost your application. So obviously for those of you interested in masters, if you have work experience, whether that's paid work experience, voluntary work experience, part-time experience, work shadowing, internship, any of those kind of things can strengthen your application. So really important to include them on your personal statement. And we have made some notes there. Please write a strong personal statement. So this applies to undergrad and postgrad. So why are you applying? What skills and experience do you have that makes you suitable? And what are your career aspirations are the kind of things we're looking to see. Okay. So just the timeline for admissions, just to clarify where we are now for 2021 intake. So obviously 2021 intake is in September. For those of you interested in undergraduate for 2021, the UCAS, what they call early consideration deadline, has now passed, and that was on the, I think it was the 29th of January. So some of our undergraduate courses will now have closed for application. So for example, a number of courses like business, economics, informatics, and some other courses have now already closed. So if you haven't applied already, you may find that they're no longer showing in UCAS. For postgraduate, usually the earliest closing date would be the end of March. So we still have time for those of you who are interested in postgraduate study to make applications. So check your application deadlines. Mostly you'll be able to find those on the website. Make sure that you provide all the required supporting documents. So for example, academic qualifications, for example, degree certificate, transcript, IELTS if you have it, personal statement, reference, etc. All that is submitted to our admissions teams. They will shortlist a second time and go through a very lengthy process, if you like, to narrow down the number of applications to those who will get offers. And then usually the decision deadlines are published on the website, but it's generally about 6 to 8 weeks. For undergrads, please be aware, because this UCAS deadline was pushed back a couple of weeks this year, it does have a knock-on effect to our offer making turnaround times. So we are hopeful, I mean, a lot of the courses are hoping to have the undergraduate offers out by the end of March. So just to manage your expectations there. And then once you have your offer, you will be asked to accept your offer via either UCAS Track or through the MyEd. That's the online portal for the postgrad applications. And then at that point, you need to check for any deposit requirement. For example, some of the master's programs will have a deposit. And then once that is finalized, you will be able to enroll. And some of the questions that you posted were about deferrals. Now, I will be fairly honest about this. So last year, when the whole COVID situation began, we did receive quite a number of deferral requests, obviously because people didn't really know how the situation was going to end. The University of Edinburgh will consider your deferral request, but it's not always guaranteed, because obviously the year after we will receive a large number of applications again. So we don't want to block too many places for the following year. So generally speaking, it was quite a low percentage of deferral requests that were permitted, but it does depend on the course. Obviously, less competitive courses are more likely to be more flexible with deferral requests. But if you feel that you need to defer, you need to contact the admissions office earlier rather than later. And if you haven't applied yet, but you're thinking, oh, I might apply, but then I might not go, I'll defer. If you don't think you're going to come this year, it's probably better not to make an application. It's probably better to wait till next year and make your application then, rather than apply in the hope that you will get a deferral. Okay, next slide. Okay, so last slide from me now. After accepting your offer, what happens next? A lot of questions about scholarships. I will be completely honest with you, the University of Edinburgh is not a big provider of scholarships. The scholarships that we do have are partial scholarships, and they tend to be mostly for master's programs. So we have pretty limited numbers of scholarships at postgraduate level. They tend to be school specific, so subject specific, not country specific. So it doesn't really matter where you come from. It's more about the school that you're applying to. And the deadlines are usually early. So once you have your offer, you can then apply for the scholarship. But as I said, you need to check on the website, because some of the scholarship deadlines are even things like the end of February or end of March. And the scholarships tend to be on academic merit. So they tend to be looking at your GPA in your bachelor's degree, for example, and also the content of your bachelor's degree, how you scored in the various different modules. So it tends to be on academic merit. You would also be able to start the visa process once you have your offer. So if you require a CAS, which most of you will require if you are not on a UK passport, you can indicate that you need a CAS. And then a CAS is the document that you will receive from the university that you need to apply for your student visa. And the CAS can only be issued no earlier than 3 months prior to the start of your programme. So typically that would be June for a September programme. And it can take 4 to 6 weeks to receive your CAS from the university. So you need to plan ahead and factor that in. And the visa application turnaround varies, but normally it takes between 4 and 6 weeks. And lastly, I just want to say that for those of you who have applied, for those of you who do receive offers from us, you will be invited by email to attend various virtual events that we will be running from March until August. So lots of welcome pre-enrollment, pre-departure events. And we do encourage you to attend as many of those events as possible so that you get a very clear picture about how teaching and learning is going to look from September 2021. And at that point, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Louise Tracy, who is going to talk a bit about how things are going to look and how things look at the moment. So Louise, I'll pass on to you now.
Thank you so much, Louise. That was a really great overview. So I'm going to spend the last about 15 to 20 minutes of our presentation today, just telling you a little bit more about the COVID situation and what we've experienced over the last year and what we're expecting to happen in the coming months, as well as telling you a little bit more about the Edinburgh experience. And then, of course, we'll be ready to take a lot of your questions. So in terms of the global pandemic, just to give you an idea of what happened when COVID hit last year. So in March 2020, we very quickly had to move all of our studies online. The UK went into a national lockdown, as did many other countries around the world. So all of our university buildings were closed, all staff moved to working from home, and students moved to studying from home. Now, one of the great things about being a world-leading university and having a school of education that's really leading in the area of digital education, we found the transition between face-to-face teaching to that digital or virtual education quite seamless. So we were able to, within the space of a week, really move all of our teaching online. So students didn't miss out on a lot of studies. They were able to just switch straight to using platforms like this, like Zoom or our virtual classroom, to meet with their professors to continue learning their subjects, which was really great. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the pandemic situation in the UK and how Scotland has adapted to the challenges, I suppose, of the pandemic situation. So as Louise mentioned before, within the UK, although we all are governed by the UK government based in Westminster and London, each of the 4 countries within the UK actually have their own devolved parliaments or governments. So of course, the Scottish government, which is led by our First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, works extremely closely with Boris Johnson and the other 2 parliaments, so within Wales and Northern Ireland. But what you often find is that some restrictions between the different countries can vary. So Louise mentioned that we have powers to make devolved decisions on things like education and healthcare. So for that reason, sometimes restrictions can be different. But generally, as the UK, we do try to follow the safest way to make sure that everyone is adhering to any policies or restrictions. Now, I would say our First Minister has been very proactive. She wants to make sure that we're keeping infection rates down. So we've found ourselves, since the easing of the first national lockdown back in June 2020, we found that we've still had quite a lot of restrictions to follow to make sure we're maintaining low infection rates. And that's something that I think Scotland generally has done quite well in that we've had lower infection rates than other countries within the UK. So we tend to find that we're still restricted in the number of people you can meet indoors, for example, or outdoors. We still distance from each other, so we must remain 2 meters distance from each other. We wear face masks. We're asked to work from home if we can, so that there's less social interaction. So generally, we found these restrictions have been happening over the past year, but we are glad to see that these infection rates are being kept down. Now, as you'll all be aware, the UK has launched its vaccination programme, and it's been quite an aggressive start to the vaccination programme, and we're really pleased to see that it's going really well. The most recent statistics show that around about 1.3 million people within Scotland have already been vaccinated. So of course, as Louise mentioned, we do only have a population of 5.5 million people. So that's 1.3 million people having had their first dose of the vaccine. In the UK in general, we are at around about 16 million people having been vaccinated now. The population of the UK is around 66 million. So we're on track, it seems, to have the majority of the population hopefully vaccinated by August, September in 2021. So something that we're really proud of and that seems to be going really well, and hopefully means that we'll be able to start returning to more of a normal situation, I suppose, that we were used to pre-March 2020 before COVID hit. You might be aware that at present, the UK as a whole is back into a national lockdown. So there have been an increase in new COVID variants over the past few months, some of those originating in the south of England, others coming in from overseas. So there have been a few more restrictions implemented. We're working from home. The national lockdown means that things like restaurants, cafes are closed. You're not allowed to meet other people, for example. And of course, our universities therefore can't have in-person classes right now. So the hope is that this lockdown will stem the spread of these new COVID variants, and we'll be able to start opening up the economy, our universities, and meeting other people in the coming spring months. So a little bit about the university and how we responded to the pandemic. So back in the springtime, April, May, the university decided quite early on that we weren't going to delay the start of our 2020 intake. So although we were unsure how the COVID situation would roll out and what it would really mean in terms of teaching, we wanted to continue with our intake and ensure that students could still begin their studies with us in September. So a lot of what we did over the summer was to make our campuses safe for the return of students and staff. So making sure that we were able to adhere to the social distancing guidelines. So I mentioned before, to remain 2 meters apart from each other, to wear face masks or face coverings while inside our internal buildings. We were very happy to see that our library, central study spaces, and some of our cafes were able to open from September onwards as well, which was really great. But you'll see from some of the images here on this slide, we had to implement one-way systems around our buildings. We had to, block off certain areas within the campus to ensure that people were remaining 2 meters apart. And what we did was we implemented a hybrid teaching approach. So that means we used a lot of our expertise within digital education to create a virtual learning environment so that students were able to still attend their classes online, whether that was from based in Edinburgh or whether they were still overseas, because of course in September last year, many students were unable to leave their countries. There were still restrictions on travel, or there was maybe just an unease about travel in general. So the virtual learning environment meant that students could still take up their courses and engage with their classmates and their professors through that virtual environment. Now, what happened was that generally our larger classes, so imagine a lecture where 100 students are usually studying that subject together. It's very difficult, of course, to maintain a 2 meter physical distance between students when 100 need to be in the same classroom. So for those types of classes, those were the ones that were taught online, so virtually using things like Zoom or Collaborate, which is our virtual platform. A lot of those were pre-recorded, which we've had a lot of really great feedback from students because they've been able to rewatch lectures, for example, or if the lecture, for example, is scheduled at Monday at 9 a.m. and that's just not the best time for you to study. You prefer to study at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday night. You can watch that class when you're ready to. So we found quite a lot of good feedback in that students like the flexibility of this type of virtual learning. And something we were able to do in semester one before the new national lockdown that we're currently in was hold some small face-to-face classes in some instances. So that would perhaps be some of our seminars or tutorials with maybe 8 to 12 students where you could meet with the professor and actually have your classes face-to-face. And as you'll see from the second picture here, generally you would be distanced from each other, you would wear your face mask, but of course you were still face-to-face. Which was a welcome approach to our teaching in semester one. Now, again, as a world-leading university, we've had quite a lot of involvement within COVID-19 research, and many of our professors and experts have actually been called upon by government officials or by international or national media outlets to talk about their expertise within the area. So our Department of Public Health or Global Public Health has been very active within the media, talking about pandemic situations, their opinions, their expertise, joining panels to talk about how they find the UK government or perhaps overseas governments have reacted to the pandemic and whether or not they have any tips or advice about what should be done going forward. So if you've logged into any of these international news outlets like BBC, CNN, Sky News, Al Jazeera, you might see some of our University of Edinburgh professors, so like Professor Devi Sridhar. We also have Professor Linda Bald, who is a professor of public health, regularly provide their expertise, which is really great. You'll also find a lot of really detailed information on our website about some of the COVID-19 research that we're doing, or some papers, research papers or publications that the university is looking at with regards to the pandemic situation. So if you're interested to see how the university is involved in this type of research, do check out the website, as I'm sure you'll find some very interesting topics. I think what might be quite useful for you as well is to hear from our current students to understand how they've been finding the pandemic situation. So of course, we've all learned a lot, I assume, over the last year about how to live in these type of strange times within a pandemic. And of course, studying when you're not either physically with your professors or fellow students, you're perhaps still overseas, or you've only just arrived in a city that you don't know, but you're not able to maybe meet with other people. How have our students, taken to that type of challenge? So there are a lot of blog posts. The Scotland.org website does have a really great insights from a number of different students studying at different universities within the country. And then blogs from each of our different schools or departments, career service, for example, to just show how we've moved a lot of our activity online, a lot of our learning or teaching online. And you can gain some really great knowledge and insights as to how students have gone about adapting to that type of situation. So this is probably the million-dollar question for a lot of you right now, in what will teaching look like for 2021? Now, of course, the pandemic situation is still ever-changing worldwide, so we're not able to make any sort of guarantees or predictions about what might happen within the next 6 months before our new term starts in September 2021. But what we can say is that we expect that we will likely still deliver a mixture of in-person and digital teaching for the start of the academic year. We of course have to monitor government guidelines, and our main aim is to ensure that the health and safety of our staff and students is paramount. So we'll always ensure that whatever we do and however we teach will be as safe as possible for those who are having to either teach or study within the campus. Of course, we hope that much more of our teaching will take place in person, but we do think that a lot of the learnings that we've had from offering many of our classes digitally might still go ahead from the September 21 intake. So based on current information that we are hearing from the UK and the Scottish Government is that we expect there will still be some physical distancing measures. So I mentioned that right now we're required to maintain a 2-meter social distance from each other, from other people. Perhaps that could be reduced to a 1-meter physical distance, which of course means that we'd have more space in the classrooms to have more students. But at present, we just need to wait to see how that unfolds over the next 6 months. So what we'll do, all of our applicants and offer holders over the next few months will receive frequent communications from the university. So we will ensure that you're aware of how things are unfolding. We do have a dedicated website though that will keep you updated on what's happening with regards to our planning for the new semester. So do keep updated there too. Okay, so on to a little bit more positive, away from the pandemic and away from what's going on in the world right now, and to talk a little bit more about the Edinburgh experience and what you can expect from studying here. So we are a very welcoming and supportive environment. Louise mentioned before that we have 45,000 students and actually over 18,000 of those come from outside of the UK. So we have vast amounts of pre-arrival and induction support, which are coordinated by dedicated teams. So that might be everything from visa support right through to arriving at your accommodation. Each student does have their own personal tutor or supervisor, so they can help give you academic advice or guidance. We have a really great new £7 million invested health and wellbeing centre. So if you need any counselling, any advice, if you have a disability or GP services, so that's the doctor surgery within the UK, within Scotland, we have access to that too, the Students' Advice Place, and of course our multi-faith chaplaincy, which welcomes people from all or no religions to meet other people and to attend these year-round events. So we got a lot of questions in advance about student life and what that looks like. And we're really excited about the student environment within the University of Edinburgh because it's such a huge part of your university experience and a huge part of just in general your learning experience, because we are aware that you can learn a lot outside of the classroom. So we have over 350 student societies. So that's everything from academic. So for example, it could be a civil engineering society, an English literature society, or it could just be anything that you have as a hobby or an interest. So everything from Harry Potter whiskey tasting, dancing. You'll really be able to make friends and meet people and try out new things while studying with us. We do have 4 venues that have bars, nightclubs, cafes, study spaces for students. The picture here is from our TV Row, which is, I think, it's the oldest student union building within the UK, which is really exciting. So a really great old debating chamber, which if you're part of the debating society is very exciting. So a vibrant social scene. Of course, many of these things have moved virtual in these COVID times, but things like comedy nights, poetry slams, pub quizzes, which is such a huge part of British culture, music gigs, and lots of things happening across the city outside of the university as well. But something, and again, especially in these COVID times, getting outdoors is something that we really encourage. So climbing Arthur's Seat. So Louise talked about that a little bit earlier before, which is the extinct volcano, which sits in the centre of the city, but has amazing views all across and looking right out to the sea, because one of the great things about Edinburgh is we're very close to the beach, and although our weather might not get up to the sunny climates of Indonesia standards, it's also very pleasant to go visit there. But we have outdoor food markets, festivals, you can have barbecue with friends in the Meadows, which is a really big green space and park quite near to the campus. And of course, 65 student-run sports clubs. So whether or not you're an amateur, whether you're you play more at a higher level and you want to join a club, we do encourage you to do that as well. So we had lots of questions about accommodation, and that's something that we have a lot of space for within the university and within the city, which is great. So I think we have over 9,000 spaces actually across all our accommodation sites for students. So generally for bachelor students, you'll spend your first year in university accommodation before then looking for maybe private accommodation with some friends, either from your halls or from your degree programme. It's guaranteed for international students, but of course there are application deadlines, so do always check out the website. But there are 2 different options. So catered, which means that you would be provided with 2 meals a day, usually breakfast and dinner, costing between £7,000 and £8,500, and that's for the 2020 intake. And then self-catering sites as well. If you're already very proficient in the kitchen, then it would be between 4,200 to around about 7,500 as well. And generally you share an apartment, so you'll have your own bedroom, but you'll tend to share living facilities, kitchen facilities. There are different options between either ensuite bathrooms or maybe shared bathrooms, just depending on what you're interested in. But you can apply for whatever you're looking for. The contract is 37 weeks, so that covers your 2 semesters, which is what a bachelor student would study. So that's from September through to May. And all of your rent includes things like utility bills, so your electricity, your heating, cleaning, contents insurance, Wi-Fi, and 24/7 security. Postgraduate accommodation is quite similar. You're guaranteed as an international student, but again, check the deadlines on the website. Unfortunately, there is no catered accommodation for postgraduate students, so you must learn to cook before you come to stay in this accommodation. It costs between £6,000 to £9,000 for a single room, and of course that lasts across 3 semesters, unlike bachelor students. So it tends to be 51-week contract from September through to early September. And there's a mixture of either studio flats or traditional hall style residencies. We do have a small number of family accommodation available if you do plan to come to the UK with family as well. So do check the website for more details if you're interested. And likewise, the rent includes utility bills, cleaning, contents insurance, Wi-Fi and security. So we did have a lot of questions in advance about careers and employability, and that's something that is really important to us as a university. So of course, we want you to come and have a really great academic experience to broaden your knowledge and learn a lot more about your specialism. But we do understand that a lot of why you come to study and why you choose to study abroad is to really boost your career prospects in future. So as a university, we're very proud to be top 50 in the world for our graduate employability ranking. We have an excellent career service who host things like employability expos, career fairs. They do CV meetings, mock interviews with the experts, panels, so that you're really learning about what skills you need to develop, what what you're looking for, what might be available to you, for example. The Career Service do also assist with part-time employment or volunteering opportunities, and that's something that, again, we do like to encourage if you feel you have time for that during your studies. They'll host things like part-time job fairs. We have our Student Ambassador scheme, where students often get involved with promoting or the university for future cohorts of students. We do also have a great enterprise hub. So for those of you who might be interested in starting up your own business or generally within entrepreneurship, our Edinburgh Innovations can help you with that. And then finally, we do have My Career Hub, where we advertise post-study work opportunities. So as a leading university, we have huge multinational companies who come to seek our graduates because they know they are such high quality. So we do advertise those opportunities on My Career Hub. And there is our own almost LinkedIn equivalent, Platform One, where you can engage with staff and alumni to talk about maybe career opportunities going forward. So we mentioned earlier a little about the graduate route visa, which is the new post-study working visa for students who are graduating from the summer of 2021 onwards. Now, this is a route that has recently been implemented or announced by the UK government. So we're still waiting on a few, I suppose, more of the nitty-gritty detail about what the application system will look like. But we are updating our website as much as possible when we get the new information. But as far as we're aware, it will be an opportunity whereby successful graduates from UK institutions will be able to apply and stay in the UK for 2 years to either look for work and to be able to work in any sector at any level. So very different to the current working visa. It offers a lot more flexibility, which is great. The applications to this visa group must be made in the UK. So that's something to consider as well, that you can't return home to Indonesia and then come back and try to apply for this route. So you do need to stay in the UK. But hopefully a really great opportunity for students who potentially like to study in the UK and then remain to work a little while afterwards as well. Something that we would really encourage you to do is to have a tour of the university. So hopefully we've given you a good overview of what we have to offer here, but of course there's a lot more to learn and a lot more to see. So we do have our virtual visit. So if you visit virtualvisits.ed.ac.uk, you can take a tour of the different buildings and the different areas, the different schools within the campus. And we also have an option for you to chat to staff and students on our UniBuddy platform. So if you follow edin.ac/student-chat, you'll be able to speak to some current students to understand what they like or what they know and what they've found of studying at the University of Edinburgh. Some useful websites here about where to find more information about finance. There is a lot of information on the website, so do your research there and you'll find lots of really good information about accommodation. So the prices, for example, that I listed were for the 2020 intake, but hopefully we'll soon be in a position to update those for the 2021 intake. We host regular open days and talks and subject-specific seminars. So do check out the open day website, because it might be that you can log on and get a taster lecture, for example, or meet with a program director from a subject area that you're interested in. So we have our postgraduate virtual open days happening in March. So do check those out, because I think you might be able to learn a lot more about your subject area there. Okay, that was quite a whirlwind. So I'm hoping that we've given you a lot of really good information about the university. We're really happy to have just under half an hour now to take any questions from you, to talk about anything that you might be interested in. I'm hoping we've covered most of the questions that you asked in your initial registration form, but do feel free to use the chat box now to pop in any other questions that you might have. What I'll do is I'll stop sharing the slides just now so that you can maybe see us on the screen a little bit easier. Of course, we have the IBEC team here, so if you have anything more specific to ask them, do feel free to go ahead and do that. I might start by just asking one of the questions that were submitted that I'm not sure we have. So please, Louise, I don't know if you want to, sorry, I can hear that my microphone is delayed a bit.
Louise, yeah, I can hear you, but it's a bit delayed. There's some questions already coming in. Now, can I just say, some of you are sending very specific questions personal to your own cases. Those are not questions that we can really answer today because we would need to have a look into the detail of those. And also, you probably shouldn't be sharing personal information online. So for those of you who have personal questions, I'm going to just put the future students' email address on the screen for you to use.
Perfect. So Louise, what I might just start with before I just start reading the chat box, we had a question in advance, and it was a question about the impact of COVID on admissions requirements. So things like cancelled exams or an inability to take an IELTS test. What should students do in that situation?
So at the moment, for those of you who are wondering about IELTS, at the moment we are only accepting IELTS, and this will remain the case while the IELTS offices or the IELTS test centres are still open. Sorry, I'm conscious I can hear myself and I'm not sure how clear this is, but I think maybe because there's so many people in the room at the moment, it's affecting the quality. But yeah, so for those of you who are needing IELTS, at the moment, we are still only accepting IELTS, and that will be the case for as long as the IELTS test centres are open. Somebody's asking, is the IELTS for visa purposes? So the IELTS may be part of your conditional offer, or you may require IELTS for visa purposes. So if you require it for visa purposes, we normally advise you to do the IELTS CELT, the secure IELTS test. If you don't require it for the visa, but you do require it for the academic requirements, then we will accept the academic IELTS. So yes, that's where we are with the IELTS at the moment. In terms of if you're not able to get another, like if it's your school qualification or something, we are aware that at the moment the plan is still for IB exams and A-level exams still to run, international A-levels and IB. They're not running in the UK, the A-levels, but they are internationally. So we will still be looking for that. If that changes and it will be based on your teachers giving you grades, then we will consider those grades which have been uploaded by your teachers. So really, you will graduate from school or from university with some form of qualification. It will be either given by your teacher or it will be through exam, and that is what we will be using to make the decisions on. So obviously the majority of offers at the moment are conditional because you haven't completed your courses, so the conditional offer will take account of, will obviously indicate what we're looking for from you.
Lovely, thank you. I see a question in the chat box from Rachel, which is with regards to the graduate route visa. So it's, are we allowed to go back home for Christmas or summer break? What are the special requirements? So Rachel, I'm happy to kind of cover that off. Like I mentioned, we're still waiting for a lot of detail from the UK government about exactly what the requirements will be. My expectation on that question is that it would be okay to travel once you've been awarded that visa. What you can't do is, for example, finish your studies on your student visa, leave the UK, and then try to come back and apply for that graduate route visa. You would have to apply for the graduate route visa while still in the UK, so before your student visa expires. And then after you've been granted that visa, I expect you would be able to travel quite freely. But again, it's really best to keep up to date with the gov.uk website, which provides all of these types of details. The new graduate visa route is meant to start from summer of 2021. So we're really expecting the UK government will have to provide a lot more detail very soon. As you can imagine, COVID has probably pushed that back a little bit. But yeah, hoping within the next month or two, we do get a little bit more clarification, but do check that out.
Louise, can I add something on the visa based on my conversations with the UK VI based in Indonesia? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Rachel, if I can add the information as mentioned by Louise about these new initiatives are still being, I should say, they are still considering on what is exactly the rules and regulations be. But based on my conversations with the embassy, uh, it was happening last November 2020. It seems that there is a lot of misunderstanding from our side, from Indonesian side, that the 2-year graduate route visa, it doesn't mean that the 2-year visa for you to work. It's the 2-year visa that will be given if you apply, subject to if you apply for that, which you will have to pay later on. That visa period is only for you to get a job. So it's a kind of bridging visa. So from a student visa to graduate route, after you get a job, then there'll be another visa applications which will suit to your contract. So if the work is going to be a year, then you have the working visa for a year. They'll update you. So within the 2 year, if you're not looking for a job, you just want to spend your money for the UK, you just want to go shopping, holidaying for 2 years, it's fine. But I don't think you can. I'm still not sure whether you can go back for summer or not. But once you get your working visa, yes, you can go back and forth during your holiday. It's up to you, right? So that's it, the additional information.
Thank you, Hendra. That was really helpful. So yeah, just keep an eye on the website. Hopefully we'll be a lot clearer soon. But I hope that helps you, Rachel, just to understand a little bit more now. And we have a question from Novi, who wants to know, I'm assuming it's about the 2021 intake. So will there be a chance that you'll have to do the whole year online without visiting Edinburgh at all? What's the possibility for deferring for a second time? Louise Z, I don't know if you want to cover that one.
Okay, so the question is, will there be any chance of having the whole year online? Well, at the moment, we don't know the answer to that. At the moment, we are hopeful that the majority of students will be able to come to Edinburgh and be taught in Edinburgh in person. So I can't say for sure that there will be the opportunity to do the whole year online, because even if you do the first semester online, there may be a requirement to come to Edinburgh for the second semester. And furthermore, for those of you who are interested in the post-study work visa, the 2-year graduate route, there may be some requirement that you have to be in the UK for a certain amount of time for your degree. So at the moment, they are saying for those applying in September 2021, they need to be in the UK by April. How that's going to work, I don't know, but bear that in mind, that that may be a factor. You're also saying, would I be able to defer for the second time? Well, again, no guarantees with that. You would have to contact the admissions office and ask if you would be allowed to defer. If you're not able to defer, I'm not sure what the policy is about refunding the deposit. I'm not sure if that means that you've already deferred last year and you want to defer again, but best to speak to the admin.
Sorry. Yeah. Hello. Yeah, it's
Yep.
Novi. Yeah. So basically, I have already deferred last year. I supposed to join the 2020-2021 class, but for personal circumstances, then I decided to defer to this year. But then again, I think the COVID pandemic hasn't been resolved in the whole world. So I prefer to defer it to 2020 if that's possible.
So usually we only allow a deferral of 1 year. That's the university policy, is that you're only allowed to defer for 1 year and then you would have to reapply. So that would be the normal policy, but I would suggest you probably contact the admissions team. Louise, if you can just put the Science Grad email address in the box for Novi, and Novi, you can contact them directly. But as I said, university policy is usually only a maximum of 1 deferral, but please contact the admissions team and you can check that with them. Louise will send you the email address.
Okay, thank you, Louise.
Okay.
Lovely.
So I've got another question that I want to read. Louise, maybe you can help with this one. It's a law one. So this is from Isa. She's applied for an MSc program in law, cybersecurity, sorry. Below is my question about the University of Edinburgh. If I register a 2-year master's degree program, is it possible to finish my study in 1.5 years? So I don't think there is a 2-year, is that not a 1-year program, the cybersecurity MSc? I'm not sure that that would be a 2-year program.
No, so I
think that's a 1-year program anyway. So you couldn't register for 2 years unless it's a 2-year program, but I think that's a 1-year program. And is it possible to finish my studies in 1.5 years or less? No, you would need to follow the actual curriculum of the program. The only time that you might be able to cut it short for a master's degree is you may be able to get permission to do the dissertation right up from your home country. So for example, you could finish the program in June, the taught part of the program, and then you could return back to Indonesia in June and then do the write-up of the dissertation between June and September. But you would still have to attend from September to June to do the taught part of the program.
Perfect. I noticed a question from Sandra, which was specifically with regard to the master's degree in marketing and business analysis within our business school. So it was about your eligibility for the program, Sandra. Just to say, do definitely double check the website. For that program, there is quite a specific quantitative background that's required because of the business analysis part of the program. So generally, the admissions department would usually look for you to have studied subjects in things like maybe algebra, mathematics, probability, statistics, maybe quantitative research, and these types of subjects. What you can do is that you can always provide your transcript to the email address that Louise Z provided earlier, futurestudents@ed.ac.uk. And we would always be happy, the business school would be happy to have a quick look to see whether or not you've studied the right subjects there. But do check the website because we do have those specifically listed. I just noticed, a question that I'd skipped by from Angie. Do Indonesians have to quarantine once entering Scotland? This is, I feel, and provides details about anything, any sort of requirement about coming to the UK or coming to Scotland in general. So, just keep checking there. It does seem to change every day, every week these days. So do keep in touch or do keep up to date there so that you know as well.
Okay, I was just going to say there's a quick question there from Mayang, which we can answer very quickly. Just conscious we've only got 10 minutes left, so we'll try to get through as many questions as possible. Mayang is asking, can I use IGCSE to replace IELTS? So just to clarify for undergraduate students applying, if you have done IGCSE and then you've gone on to do A-level or on to do IB, then you don't need to submit the IELTS. If you have done Indonesian high school and then you've gone on to an IB or onto A-level, you will have to submit the IELTS. So if you have done the middle school, IGCSE or O-levels, and obviously English is one of those, usually we're looking for a B grade or above. If you have that, then you do not need to sit the IELTS.
Perfect. I noticed a question from Nur Hassana as well with regards to the graduate route visa and whether you would be eligible for that opportunity as a Schevening awardee. What I would say is you would need to double check that with the requirements of your scholarship. I'm pretty sure that Schevening often are looking for students to return back to their home country after studying. So I would definitely check that with Schevening to see if that's an opportunity for you, but it could be that because of your Schevening requirements, it's not. So do check that. Louise, I don't know if you want to help with Wenny's question, which with regards to public places being open?
That's a good one, Winnie.
Student
Yes, it's a good question. You're asking about student societies will be open. So student societies are still operating. I guess they're having their meetings online. And when I say online meetings, it might still be fun online activities, like they may be hosting like Zoom quizzes and things like that. But at the moment, they're not able to meet in groups because we are only allowed to meet one other person outside at the moment. So I feel that societies will still be ongoing. In terms of sports clubs as well, the rules regarding sports are changing, like ever changing as well. So sometimes if it's an outside sport, for example, we're allowed to do it. If it's an indoor sport, we're not allowed to do it. So by the summer, the expectation is if things continue the way that we're going and the numbers of cases continue to go down and the vaccine still goes up, things like outside sports and outside meetings and societies will definitely be able to take place, and more likely than those which require you to be based indoors. But I do feel that even this academic year, student societies will still be having meetings online and Zooms and whatever. So they will still exist and they will still be happening, but probably not quite in the usual format. But that's a really good question. And when you say about enjoying your time in Edinburgh, going to public places and things, so we are still, things are closed at the moment, but you can still walk around and have a look at monuments and tourist attractions from the outside. So you would still have that possibility. But we are hopeful that if things continue the way they're going, by the end of the summer, things should be in a better position for more group activities. Good question.
Definitely. And I think when we saw a lot opening back up in the kind of autumn time last year, they were still open, but you would have to do things like book a ticket to visit a museum instead of just turning up on the day. So, you know, even these places have just kind of adapted to make sure they don't have too many people in at once. So fingers crossed that will go ahead. I'm just going to try and pick out, because we only have, you know, five minutes left. So Sandra, may I use TOEFL to apply for a master's degree? Absolutely, we do accept TOEFL, so you can check on the website for the requirement. I think generally it tends to be a score of 100 and above, but you'll be able to find that out on the website. Callie, there was a question about teacher assessed grades and normal grades being considered differently, and I know Louise talked about this just right at the start of the Q&A. So of course we're taking into account cancelled exams and how assessments and gradings had to change. So we will adapt these policies as much as possible. Rita wants to know, do we require the CRE test for applying? Generally, no, we don't require any sort of like admissions test, so GMAT or CRE. If any degree program did, it would be clearly stated on the website. But generally, our is mostly based on your academic transcript, so your bachelor degree or high school qualification. Louise, there was a question here about if I had admitted to mechanical engineering and wish to switch to say maths after the first semester. Is that possible?
Sorry, just for the question.
That was from
now.
Lane. It came at 1:13.
Oh yeah, okay. So first of all, Leigh, if you apply for engineering, you would need to make sure that you meet the requirements for maths before you were able to change. So you'd have to have a look at the entry requirements to see if you actually met the requirements. Secondly, it would depend on the availability of spaces in maths, because maths is quite a popular program and it's quite likely to be fully subscribed already. So it would depend if they had that option to swap. Really, the sooner you tell them, the better. There's more chance of being able to change, but it would depend on availability of spaces and if you meet the maths entry requirements.
Perfect. Messia has asked about, you've applied on the 14th of January, when will you receive the information regarding your acceptance? It's very much going to depend on the programme you applied for. Was it bachelor, was it master? Do you have application deadlines and rounds? Generally, it can take between 6 to 8 weeks, so you still have a little bit of time to wait. So do keep an eye on either past track, which will be how you determine the status of your application for bachelor programmes, or your MyEd portal for master's degree. So do keep an eye there. There was a question about LPDP, but Hendra, I noticed that you've popped some information in there about that, so that's great. Let's see if we can pick out some quick questions. Is there a deadline for those who already accept a conditional offer to receive their unconditional one? So that was from Wenny, and then from Ido, there was also a question about how long to submit your IELTS, for example. So generally, we would advise you to aim to meet the conditions of your offer by the 31st of July. If there's ever a where you're going to have to wait longer than that, we encourage you to get in touch with us so that we're aware. There might be some deadlines in how soon you have to accept your offer. So for example, within the business school or within, I think, the School of Law, for many of their programs now, they have a 28-day deadline to accept your offer. You have to pay a deposit towards your tuition fees to accept that offer. But these things will always be listed in your offer letter. So just make sure, I know it can be a long letter with a lot of information, do read that very carefully to ensure you're not missing any of that information.
I think maybe we could finish on the question about the Muslim community from Messia. How about that? So Messia is asking, how is the Muslim community in Edinburgh? So one thing we forgot to mention really is about the number of Indonesian students that we have in the university and how that is in the city, if you like. So Indonesian students, we have probably this year a couple of hundred students registered, and that's postgraduate, undergraduate, domicile Indonesia. So these are people who've applied from Indonesia. So we do have quite a large Indonesian student community. From Southeast Asia, our largest student community really is Malaysia, however. So we have more students from Malaysia than Indonesia. But we have a Indonesian student society who would definitely be the people to contact about life in Edinburgh as a Muslim student, if you like. We also have a Southeast Asian student society, which covers the whole region. So they would be a good place to start. And you can probably have a look on Facebook for those societies because they do have active pages on Facebook. But I was just going to mention specifically, Messia, that the university is located literally about 100 meters from the mosque. So there is a central mosque in Edinburgh, which is located at, well, it's not part of our campus, but it's right next to our central area, the George Square area. And around that area, there are lots of halal restaurants, cafes, and shops. So there is an area in Edinburgh around the university called Newington, which is where we have a lot of these halal provisions stores and cafes and restaurants, all kind of around the mosque. But the city has several mosques, so there's not just the one I'm referring to. There are mosques in other residential areas as well. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I think Scotland is a very welcoming country, and I know you're maybe asking that question not just about the availability of halal food, etc., but you're also asking about the, you know, the thinking and the, you know, how Scottish people are about that. But I would say Edinburgh is a very welcoming city because we have so many different nationalities living here. As we said, we have over 160 nationalities at the university alone. Scotland as a country, very welcoming, very hospitable, not really any reports of kind of racist interactions around the university, and if there were, that would certainly be controlled and curtailed by the university authorities. So I think you should feel that you will be able to get the provisions that you need. You will have in place the support that you need, and you should be able to feel very comfortable and confident here in Edinburgh and in Scotland.
Louis, would you mind if I add the information about the Muslim societies? I'll be sharing in bahasa Indonesia ya, in Indonesian. Mungkin ini satu hal yang banyak dipertanyakan, kenapa tidak ada di presentasi. Jadi sebetulnya hal-hal seperti ini itu tidak dibahas di presentasi oleh kebanyakan universitas di Inggris karena itu adalah hal yang sudah sangat-sangat umum dan sudah hal yang sangat-sangat biasa bagi orang Inggris. Jadi kalau kita berbicara mengenai kebutuhan halal food, kalau di sana halal food itu bukan hanya tidak pakai minyak yang non halal atau apapun itu, bahkan sampai butchernya juga, pemotongannya itu mereka sudah halal. Standar halal mereka jauh lebih tinggi daripada standar halal di Indonesia. Jadi ini pengalaman dari berkali-kali kunjungan kami ke Inggris, berkali-kali kunjungan kami ke setiap kota-kota termasuk Edinburgh. Bahkan saya melihat ke pasar-pasarnya, saya melihat ke masyarakatnya. Yang pakai hijab ya tetap aja pakai hijab, tidak ada masalah. Yang mau cari makanan halal sangat banyak sekali, tidak ada masalah. Yang membutuhkan masjid, bahkan dari teman-teman kita yang bersekolah di sana, mereka di saat mereka sedang biasanya menjelang Idul Fitri ya, mereka tidak bisa pulang, mereka berkumpul sama-sama, mereka sholat Id sama-sama, mereka lakukan di kotanya masing-masing. Dan hal ini sama sekali tidak ada hambatan, tidak ada halangan, tidak ada masalah. Jadi jangan khawatir. Ya, right? That's my answers about the Muslim community.
Thank you so much. I think, yeah, we've just logged over our time, so we might end the presentation here. If you have any questions for us going forward, we're always more than happy for you to reach out. So we did provide the email address earlier, which is futurestudents@ed.ac.uk. Louise will pop that back into the chat box. So do feel free to keep in touch with us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to help. We'll be delivering more sessions like this throughout the rest of the year. So do continue to engage with us. Contact IBED if you need any sort of application support. And hopefully we'll soon see you as enrolled students within Edinburgh. But thank you so much for your time today. Thank you, IBEC, for all of your support. And yeah, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Louis.
Thank you.
Kalau ada yang mau email ke saya juga boleh. If anyone wants to ask anything, you can email me as well. I'll put my email on the chat room.